Hello. Today we're going to talk about album covers. Now, why is a good album cover important? Well, we're going to assume that not everybody already knows who you are and knows your work, and it's often the first thing that potential listeners see. A great cover grabs attention and can intrigue people who might otherwise just overlook your album. First, we're going to look at some references together and talk about the features that make these covers good. Then we're going to break down and redesign a few of these references together. Okay, so the first thing that I see with these references is high quality photos or imagery. You've probably noticed that a ton of big name artists' album covers are literally just portraits or creatively shot photos. These are photos that are high resolution, have good coloring, are visually interesting, and have some depth and some draw to them. For example, here are a couple comparisons between photos that don't engage and photos that demand attention. They feel alive, they speak, they tell a story, they have character to them. Okay, next and more broadly, let's look at color. Again, when we look at these references, the color of the background to the photos, to the type, to the elements, find a sense of harmony. This is basic color theory. Basic. We want to use colors that complement each other. You look nice. Thanks. Take this cover, for example. This overall has a very retro feel, so the colors used are retro print colors. The white in the title is not a cold, flat digital white. It's warmer, off-white, and looks printed and pairs well with the CMYK colors on this cover. The blue and the red-orange are high contrast, and while that's not my favorite color combo, they do pair well together to create that retro feel. Lastly, let's look at typography. We should aim to make typography add to the design value. If you have a cool cover, let's take this one for example. If we add text to it, we need to ask, does this add to the design value? And realize that if it's not adding, it's subtracting. If you can't find typography that adds to the value of your design, you need to weigh how much time you actually want to spend trying to find something that fits the vibe. And if it's taking too much time, maybe not having type on the cover isn't the end of the world. Plenty of covers don't have text on them, and most of those look cooler without the text anyway. All I'm saying is don't sacrifice overall design value just by adding text to the cover if it isn't 100% necessary. I've designed a couple covers for some indie artists. Half the time I tell them if it's dope without the text, let's just not risk it. For example, I took this photo of my buddy that's an artist, and after some simple coloring and touching up, I said, let's just use this. It's clean and has good energy to it, and I didn't want to risk tanking the overall design value just by adding a title or an artist name to this. I mean, you can see the name of the song and the artist name in the UI of the app of whatever you're listening to the song on. Okay, now that we've got that covered, let's practice and redesign these 3 album covers together. Okay, so here is the first album cover that we're gonna be mimicking. Obviously, I don't have this exact photo. We're gonna try to find something that looks similar. Right here we have a sans serif, more of a retro 80s, maybe early 90s looking sans serif. And then up here we have some sort of script. This is almost like a classic car kind of Chevrolet script. So we're gonna see how close that we can get to that. So I'm gonna start by color picking this background. It may seem a little bit lighter than that. Something like this looks good. Then we're gonna go ahead and do our text. If this font doesn't work, I think Cal Sans also might be pretty close. Yeah, let's try Cal Sans. Cal Sans is close, but the S does not flatten out like we see on that one. So I'm gonna look around for another second. So Poppins is actually pretty close. The only thing I would need to do is close this letter spacing here to make it quite a bit more compact. Then I'm gonna color pick this text. Obviously, before I said that we have this kind of off-white color, maybe something a little bit lighter than that. Yeah, something like that looks nice. Size that up, and we're getting pretty close. Now add some more text, and I'm just gonna search around for this script for a second. So I couldn't find that exact font, but I did find this that kind of fills the same kind of space. As you can see, the V has something swooping off of it here, and so does the T, and the connections in the S looks very similar. So obviously this is not one for one, but it does look pretty close, or at least has the same kind of classic car vibe and fills the same space that we have going on over here in the top middle. Next, I need to look for a good photo, so I'm going to go to my photos panel and search around for a photo for a minute. Obviously, if you were the artist, you'd probably have a photo of yourself, or if you were making a cover for an artist, you'd have a photo of them that you would use but for the purposes of this, I'm just going to go look around in the photos panel to try to find something that complements this style. So I did find this that kind of falls into that same kind of retro style. I might play with the hue just a little bit. And since it's already got this blue, I'm going to assume that in this photo, this blue is actually a sky. It's not a background. They probably took this photo outside. So I'm going to take this photo and scale it up and then make this all the way to the back. And then I can click W to turn on my trim view. Now the colors on this are kind of intense and we're going for that more CMYK kind of printed. So I'm just going to play with these colors a little bit. So this is already looking a little bit more retro. I can play around with the title and the artist name just a little bit. I think this needs to be slightly smaller. Make sure that's centered up. And then we're going to start adding a texture to this to see if we can even get further to that retro feel. So I remember in the reference there being kind of like a paper texture on this. So something like this is pretty close because it's got some of that nice wear and tear kind of on the edges that we're going for. We could even look in the photos panel for a texture here as well. We could also add something like this just to give it a slight paper feel. Play with the opacity on that until it looks good. So this is all the way turned on, and then we can turn that down until it starts to look good. So I ended up also changing the font here just because I feel like it fits the vibe of the cover more. It still fills the same amount of space. That's really what we're going for, is the same kind of hierarchy of text to photo to placement, and then the colors are also very important. And we have our texture here, so we can see our reference and then our cover right here. Not too bad. So here's our second reference here. I can actually foresee this one being slightly challenging because of this font. I'm not sure that we have something exactly like this, but I will try to see what I can do and get as close to that as possible. Really, all we're looking at is this color gradient, a couple of stars in the font, and then it has this kind of paper texture that's worn around the edges to kind of emulate like a vinyl cover that has been worn over the years. So let's see what we can do with this. So first I need to change my background from a solid color to a gradient color. I can start with this black right here. I want that to end somewhere around right there, and then we can click to add another color and use our color picker to do this blue. Maybe I want that blue to be slightly deeper and a little bit more vibrant. I can click again. Looks like there's a slight green in there, and then that's going to change very quickly to kind of a burnt yellow, and then it's going to taper off into orange. So this is actually pretty close. So what I'm going to do to this is I'm going to go into my textures panel, go down to noise or grain, and then find one that looks pretty close to my reference. And this right here on an alpha mask is not too terribly different from the original right here. Obviously this isn't the highest resolution photo, so some of that grain is actually coming from the quality of the picture of the album itself and not necessarily the actual cover. So we have to kind of do our best guesstimate here. I'm just going to play with the colors a little bit to make sure that I've got what I need, and that's looking just slightly closer. There we go. Next, I'm going to look for some stars that I can put up in the top right corner, similar to this album cover. So I found this very thin star that's pretty close. We're going to go for another kind of off-white color because this is kind of vintagey retro as well, and we don't want that cold, flat white. And I'm just going to position these. They're all three the same size, so that makes things easy. 1, 2, 3. Pretty similar to our reference here. And then the last thing that we need to do is find something similar vibe to put down here for the font. I think this says Intimate Sunset, so we're going to see what we can do with that. I'm just going to put some placeholder text in here that I can switch through my fonts and compare it to my reference. So now that I've got that there, I can go through my fonts and see if I can find anything that looks pretty close. So I found this font here that is pretty close actually, and the only thing that I did was put a border weight on it that's the same color as this kind of burnt orange, and then turn that up so that it makes kind of fade away a little bit. It makes the characters thinner and gets rid of some of those lines and details almost like this kind of printed Gothic font that you see on the album cover that we're referencing. So somewhere around 4 or 5 looks good. Let's do 5 on both of these. And not too bad compared to our reference on this one as well. So here is our last reference. Specifically, this one up here in the top left looks to be the actual album cover for this project that we're going to be referencing. This is a little difficult. I don't have this exact photo. We're going to have to look for something that is very visually interesting, kind of something that you would have to interpret. This was obviously staged and shot like this very specifically, and if you were making an album cover or were the artist yourself, you would probably want to stage something like this if you were going for this vibe. A very visually interesting photo, kind of retro, faded, but has vibrant colors, and everything down to the clothes that they're wearing, the black and white, to not take away visual interest from the background, the greenery, and then this drum set right here is all very important for the vibe that they're going for. So first, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take care of this bar over here of text on the left. So I'm going to go grab this shape, and it's not flat white. It looks to be almost like a gray here, and I'm going to put this right here and try to make it occupy just about the same amount of space. This is a sans serif typeface right here, kind of retro futuristic-y, something like, it also looks like it has a little bit of an ink trap right there as well, so something like Familige and Grotesque would be good for that. And just for the sake of time, I'm just going to use the same words as well here and not waste time trying to think of alternate titles for this. The letter spacing on this is pretty tight actually, so we're going to do something like that. This first part of the word is a bit heavier in font weight, so maybe like medium, and then the last 2 letters are pretty light, so we're going to go regular for that. So for this font, something like Roboto actually looks pretty good because of the multiple font weights. For this one, this is bold, and then this is light. You could try thin as well. That might actually look a little closer. Something in between light and thin would be good, but we're just going to go with light right here. And our letter spacing is pretty tight on these to get these letters closer together. So I'm going to group these and rotate this, size that down just a little bit, and place this right here on that left shape. I can't tell what this says, so I'm just going to look for a font that's a little condensed like that and then make something up. So I can definitely tell that this is a condensed typeface right here because of how much weight that it has with so few letters. And I'm going to place that right here in line with the top left corner of that B, maybe size that up just a hair. Then it looks like we've got this kind of arch feather looking thing that I have seen before but don't know what it's called, but I know that we have that element, so I'm going to search around for it. So evidently it's literally just called a wreath, so we're going to make this ever so slightly darker here. Something like that looks good. Size that down and place that in our top left corner. So I've got this little track list. Obviously this would say 1 through 10, but for the sake of time, it's just, I've got 1 through 10 down here, and then all of this just says 1. We're just going to fill this space over here on the left like it does in this reference cover. And we've got a little bit of room to spare, so we're going to take this right here and size that up and make sure that this is aligned. And so is our wreath. Now I just need to look for a extremely interesting photo. So I chose this photo here. Obviously it's not as retro and print color as the reference here that we have, but it is good in the sense that it is very high contrast to this white bar that we have over here. We have essentially no color and then a bunch of color, which is what we see represented here in our reference. So that is the third reference done. I hope this video was helpful, informative, and entertaining. Hey, if you're not subscribed yet, hit that subscribe button, give this video a like, drop a comment, and tell me which cover was your favorite. And let me know if you want me to do another design video just like this one, redesigning album covers, and I will 100% do that. If you haven't tried Kittl yet, I have a promo code for you in the description of this video. Check it out, and we will see you in the next one.